Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of the straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to jump right into the closing arguments. The feds are going first, just so you know that where we are, they're doing theirs first. I believe they're going to take a whole day, if not half of a day, and the defense will start tomorrow, if you will. And so, yeah, this is how it's going down. And let me see. We're going to see who has their Johnny Cochran moment, if you will, when we think about it from that perspective, right? The Johnny Cochran moment. If the story doesn't fit, then you must acquit, if you will, for the people who don't know what I'm talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get into it. Boom. Here we go. AUSA Slavic, she communicated with the defendant's girlfriend, his security. You heard their names: D-Rock, Bonds, Rube, Uncle Paulie, Fahim. They were armed and ready. Remember the incident at the dinner with Suge Knight? David James told you Combs had guns. Prosecution. In the search, law enforcement found guns, including a rifle with a serial number defaced in L.A. and two AR-15s with their serial numbers cut out, and in the defendant's closet. You also have the rotating cast of assistants paid by the defendant's business. Ladies and gentlemen, this is crazy. They're trying to really formulate some kind of RICO situation that really, truly, honestly, ladies, it doesn't exist. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't exist. Wow. Prosecution, Slavic. Brendan Paul said he made $100,000 a year. Christina Karam made 6 times that. When your boss asks you to buy drugs, you're committing a crime. When you kidnap someone or lock his girlfriend in a hotel room after your boss stomped on his face, it's a crime. But it's not RICO, it's domestic violence, ladies and gentlemen. This is crazy. USA Slavic, the law does not require us to know that they liked committing these crimes. You saw Christina Karam chiding the defendant to not be so reckless, but she got him cash, drugs. She made a member of the enterprise. She was a member of the enterprise. It impacted interstate commerce. Minimal is fine. Amazing. I can't believe they're really going after this like that. But notice they still brought up the Cassie hotel room situation, even though that they said that they weren't going to use that, if you will, right? So that's interesting. Very interesting, if you will. So let's see. The prosecution, Slavic. Combs knowingly became a member. He was the boss. They're trying to make this look like some kind of mob family, ladies and gentlemen. It's simply not sticking. I mean, definitely not for me. He was the boss. He was the through line of the racketeering acts, distribution of drugs, kidnapping, arson, bribery, facilitating, and sex trafficking of Cassie and Jane, forced labor, travel for commercial sex, cover up. Nah, I don't see it. Like I said, we're going to see what they come up with, but I still don't see where this argument is actually relevant, if you will. Slavic, you only need to find that someone would commit two acts in any of these categories. It could be two acts of drug distribution, one kidnapping, or just two. You have far more than two. Let's start with drugs, an essential ingredient of freak-offs. But Diddy never bought drugs. Other people say they bought drugs. Once again, it's not enough to make an inference in something. That's what the Rule 29 was about. You have to put possession as 9/10 of the situation. We understand that Diddy had a drug habit, but once again, you got to know that they're not really gonna deal with that from that perspective. So, for the people who understand and who are knowing. Say I tax dollars at work. Shout out to the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody who joining us this morning, I appreciate it. Let's keep going. The prosecution, most involved were D-Rock, KK, and Fahim, but others helped keep the drug supply high. We are not talking about marijuana, but what Brandon Paul called hard drugs. There are stipulations of the drugs found in the searches. So now they basically want, good morning everybody in the chat. Now they basically want, they want drugs bought for personal use to be now considered drug distribution. As if they were buying the drugs and distributing them to be resold on the streets, if you will. This is crazy. But like I say, you can see how people try to formulate certain kind of arguments that are not actually relevant, if you will. But this is what happens. Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen, just a minute. Yeah, just a minute, ladies and gentlemen, trying to pull the actual feed thing up so that we can see it again. Sometimes this the feed does what it wants to do. Like I said, but we got two situations here where we can bring you both. We will definitely not be knocked out the game because that's not how we live. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go right here. Let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll. Right here. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. 2 minutes ago, the prosecution, cocaine, meth, oxy, ketamine, and a dissociative drug, a GHB, mushrooms, Molly, Tusi, a combination dyed pink. It's 1305. Thank you. I appreciate you, Country Boy Fitness. Thank you so much. Like I said, we're going to keep on doing what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to do it, and never slack on that Mac, and always try to get back. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for everybody joining me in the chat as we cover these closing arguments by the feds. Appreciate it. So she said that the prosecution said it's 1305 and 1306. The quantities are not relevant. Yes, they are relevant. You see how they're trying to negate the fact that the quantities are not relevant? I just said for personal use. The quantities are not relevant. If the quantities were not relevant, then Brendan Paul would be in jail. But they needed Brendan Paul to snitch. So therefore, the 27 grams that he had got caught with, that he admitted to having, they didn't really care about that too much. But we, in our community, we know of black people who got caught with 3 grams of crack that did 10 years under mandatory minimum sentences before Barack Obama in a case law got that overturned, right? So now they want us to believe that the quantities are not relevant. It's not an element of this crime. Distribution does not require a sale, right? Right? But they never put any drugs in Puffy's hand. If you gonna give the people that had drugs, you gave them immunity. You can't say now that those drugs belong to them. The drugs that they found at his house, yeah, you could say that they're his. But those drugs were for personal use. Mr. Combs went to the rehab, but they don't want to talk about that. The prosecution also, you know the names of the drug dealers by now. Guido, One Stop, Baby Girl. Jane told you that on 2 occasions she was told to bring drugs when she flew to meet him. She coordinated with KK. It's corroborated by text messages. Amazing. Prosecution, KK told Jane to swing by Mapleton to pick up the Guido package. He was called during hotel nights. So we know what the Guido package was, more ecstasy. The security team knew what it was. Guido texted Fahim, Puff has a $450 balance with me. Right, a $450 balance for personal drug use. right? Can you imagine that, somebody bought you a little bit of, well, even right now under the federal law, a little bit of marijuana, and you kept getting marijuana for for your personal use, or your glaucoma or whatever it was before it was issued or understood to be something that could be used for medical purposes. Could you imagine getting that, and then the feds come and getting and being like, yeah, they've done it before. Like I said, they've done it for less than 5 grams of crack. They gave people 10 years for that. Not and like I said, they called it distribution, and it was 9 times out of 10 for personal use. They didn't care if you were black. You know what I mean? And if you white, and you like I said, you get the Brendan Paul treatment. 27 grams of what's the name? When he gets locked up, he said, it's mine. Then comes to court and testifies that it's, no, I was getting it for Sean Combs. It's crazy. But then on top of that, they gave him immunity. That's the craziest thing about it. It's like, well, they gave him immunity. Why would he need immunity? So he could come and tell you that he bought drugs for Sean Combs? Prosecution. Brendan Paul asked for $780 for personal Gucci items. That is hard drugs. Drugs were distributed. Do you see how they trying to do? Drugs were distributed. It doesn't matter. He wasn't buying kilos or selling them. See, they know. See, like I said, once again, you can see that I understand what's going on. You see it doesn't matter if they weren't kilos or they weren't selling them. Personal use is just a distraction. Are you serious? They say personal use is just a distraction. The federal government just admitted that personal use of hard drugs is a distraction. They bought and distributed to people around him. Are you serious? Wow. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. You see in the federal government right here, they want Diddy so bad. And you have to look at this. Read that again. Slavic. Brendan Paul asked for $780 for personal Gucci items. That is hard drugs. Drugs were distributed. The government, and I quote, it doesn't matter. He wasn't buying kilos or selling them. Personal use is just a distraction. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to say it. This is racist by nature. This is racist by nature. I've never ever heard that in any kind of criminal case involving drugs, and it's admitted that the person who they're trying to deal with, not as a not like Brendan Paul. When Brendan Paul got caught with drugs, he said he went to a diversion program. That's different. That's after the fact. We know for a fact that before Diddy was ever indicted, that he had attended drug rehab. Right? During the apology for the Cassie video, Diddy apologized, right? And said he was on drugs real bad and he had sought help. Not at that particular time, but before then. We even heard Cassie actually testify, right, that Diddy went to the rehab. That was things that we didn't know personally, you know what I mean, in the public. So now the government is now saying that personal use is just a distraction. I think that's going to come back to bite the government, if you will. They bought and distributed to people around him. No, people around him took drugs. They didn't distribute nothing. It was drugs bought for personal use. It wasn't drugs bought to be resold. And so now they're basically selling you, telling you that, okay, so what was the benefit? Man, this is crazy. Y'all got to pay attention to this, man's people that have been to jail for far worse than this. Listen, Slavic, Cassie used drugs at every freak-off supplied by the defendant, right? He introduced Jane to drugs. Hold on. Didn't they just say personal drug use was a distraction? Well, why even bring up the fact that Cassie used drugs at every freak-off supplied by the defendant? He introduced Jane to drugs, gave them to her at all but one hotel night. He gave drugs to Carrie Morgan and Bonna Bondelin, right? Breon was her real name, right? He made Brendan Paul try Tusi to see if it was good. He didn't make Brendan Paul do nothing. Brendan Paul was already getting high. But once again, nobody's accountable for their behavior here. The only one that's accountable for their behavior is the one who had the biggest drug habit out of them all. And that's Sean P. Diddy Combs. Remember, Jane testified that she said that Puffy looked rough. His eyes were red. He was looking jaundiced, right? They don't give a damn about that. He could have been damn near deaf. Personal use is a distraction. Pay attention, y'all. So remember, if you back during the crack era, if your family member, this is how the government saw it, right? Or at least some people in the government saw it. If your family might have had a crack habit, right? Or personal use was a distraction. They were all criminals. They were into the drug trade. They were distributing drugs. This is who they were, right? This is what the government, this is how they saw it, right? Prosecution, D-Rock would text One Stop, need to see someone for bro, that is. The defendant, Guido, asked for him to cover the defendant's drug debt. Are y'all listening? Guido asked for him to cover the defendant's drug debt. They never got Sean P. Diddy Combs purchasing drugs. He said the people around him, that's what they said. Hey, KK knew he was distributing drugs to the women for the Wild King nights. That's like saying these are hard drugs. That's like saying KK knew that he was smoking weed with them, doing King nights. If alcohol was illegal, KK knew that he was supplying drinks to them for Wild King nights. Did KK know what was going on for Wild King nights? No, she didn't know who was using drugs. Listen, the prosecution, Jane told KK she was having a bad come down. KK gives pro tips how to deal with it. Plain and pro tips on how to deal with it. It's never confirmed that KK used any kind of drugs. So how would she be a pro? Once again, listen to the language that's being used, right? How could KK give pro tips? And these insinuations and insertions and inferences into what it is that they're trying to explain. Plain and simple. They say plain and simple. This is drug distribution. How about kidnappings? They committed them under both California and New York law. Consider Cassie. Bond made her stay put. Not true. Didn't yesterday they basically said that they were dropping certain predicate elements in regards to this situation. Notice they dropped it, but they're still mentioning it in the closing arguments in trying to obtain kidnap. Cassie wasn't kidnapped, ladies and gentlemen. Cassie was free to go where she wanted to go. Somebody who's kidnapped is kidnapped permanently. They kidnap. When we've heard about people being kidnapped, they're not kidnapping and then allowed to go to the Gucci store. They're not kidnapped and allowed to go to Turks and Caicos. They're not kidnapped and allowed to go to the studio with a Kid Cudi, with Nicki Minaj, with Rick Ross, with all of these people, ladies and gentlemen. This case is bogus, man. No, when they say cut creators, they say, well, Bond made her stay, not Diddy. They're saying this was part of the conspiracy, the racketeering, right? By Bond making her stay. That's not true, though. Check it out. USA Slavic, the defendant called Cassie a slut. He stomped on her face. All of those are domestic violence situations. She was disfigured. Roger Bonds caught her and brought her back. The defendant made her go to the London hotel on Sunset. So no one saw her. She wanted to go home to her mom, but no. And there was not one police report. Where's the police report supporting this? It's crazy. Wow. The prosecution, it's clear Cassie did not consent to staying in the London hotel. David James testified the defendant demanded to see his search history. If he had posted that the defendant assaulted Cassie in the club, then there's Capricorn Clark. What? AUSA Slavic, they made her take a lie detector test for days in an empty office building in Manhattan. This was 2004. She was holding expensive jewelry that went missing. Uncle Paulie took her to the future headquarters of Bad Boys. She was tested for 5 lies. Ladies and gentlemen, she was taking a lie detector test as part of her job. But now they're trying to say that she was kidnapped? You know, the sad part about it is, this is so disingenuous based on the fact that she was kidnapped. So hold on, let's be clear. Did Capricorn Clark have to stay at that Manhattan building overnight? Was there a mattress provided for her there to sleep there at night? Were there locks on the doors at this Manhattan office building at night, and just one mattress and a sheet or a blanket provided? No. Can you see through it, ladies and gentlemen? Wow. So they're basically saying she was kidnapped. Wow. The prosecution, the man administering the test told her if she failed, she'd end up in the East River. In Central Park, the defendant told her if anything happened, he'd have to kill her. David James remembers this. This was attested to get the rat out of the team. Amazing. Yeah, that's going to be the question. But no, I mean, this is just when you say, can the jurors see through it? Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. Share on your Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Let them know we at the closing argument stage. Whether the jury can see through this or not, once again, you can best believe that when the defense comes on to bring their closing arguments, it's going to be way more compelling. You heard since the prosecution has been offering their closing arguments that in I would say five paragraphs of their closing arguments, they've mentioned the same thing, right? So this shouldn't really take that long, if you will. So I think they're basically going over the first day dealing with the prosecution, and maybe tomorrow they might start with the defense, or maybe today, I don't know. But yeah. The prosecution in December 2011 ruled helped the defendant kidnap Capricorn Clark. See, ladies and gentlemen, these people crazy, man. In December 2011, rule helped the defendant kidnap Capricorn Clark. It started on December 22nd. The defendant banged on Capricorn's Clark door with the gun. He was out for revenge. He barked an order at Capricorn Clark: "Get dressed. We're going to kill Cuddy." That's hearsay, right? That's hearsay. That's what she said he said. But okay, to be offered as the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out, ladies. And so now, even after they drop some of those the Kid Cudi things, they still mentioning it. So they just going full fledged ahead with their argument, as if they didn't make the admission the other day and yesterday in court, should I say. The prosecution, they drove to Kid Cudi's house. The defendant had a gun in his lap. This was kidnapping. He moved her a substantial distance. He moved her a substantial distance. The defendant said he wouldn't let her. He said the defendant said that he wouldn't let her out until, I would think letting her out until she brought him Cassie, who he kicked when she arrived into a fetal position. That's domestic violence once again. Well, it wasn't so much that the situation involving the Capricorn Clark. I think she knew that Cassie was dealing with Kid Cudi, and knowing that Diddy was mad at that situation from that perspective. The kidnapping situation wasn't kidnapping, man. Oh man, this is crazy. That's what they saying though. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. Shout out Queen for Life, Easy Q Universe, Cut Creatives, Universal Ass, NIC Nick, Sam Jr., Classy, Koi Rude, Lola Grease, JoJo, what's good? Do you want a shout out? Put the thumbs up. Like I said, share this on your Instagram. We shouting everybody out. I think we got 2 or 3 more days. They probably try to have this case to the jury by next week, if you will. Holder Great, what's good? Sam Jr. Right. And that's what she testified to Ravens fan 22, B Town Entertainment, Nancy Nicole, Marsha Trotman, Curtis Gilliam. Welcome, y'all. Prosecution Slavic. Cassie, who was with Kid Cudi that morning, testified with this. Excuse me. And the officer who responded to the 911 call, he saw a black Escalade registered to Bad Boy. Then on January 12th, 2012, the defendant had Kid Cudi's car set on fire. Arson. By who? Once again, you can see they're making inferences to something. Well, who did he have a Kid Cudi set on fire, a car set on fire by, right? Making an inference, you got to prove it. The prosecution Slavic, someone cut a hole in the roof of Kid Cudi's car and dropped in a Molotov cocktail. We're not listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're not suggesting the defendant cut the hole. He didn't even buy his own suit, right? You heard the voice notes. He said he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car. What voice notes? Oh man, what voice notes? We talk. What voice notes are they talking about? Listen. Then they said, when you got to understand, they said we're not suggesting a defendant cut the hole. He didn't even buy his own suit. So why would you even make the argument? You're suggesting that he had somebody else do it. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to say. But who? That could have been anybody. AUSA Slavic. What are the odds he says it and it happened? Get it? So basically they're saying, what are the odds? Oh, he said it and it happened. So he must have had somebody do it. The coincidences just keep on coming. The defendant and Rube just happened to be there a few weeks before Kid Cudi was driving the same Porsche the night of the trespass. What are the odds? So they're basically once again making inferences to say, yeah, he was responsible for blowing up Kid Cudi's car. But we really can't prove it. But we just want you to believe that, the coincidences add up. And I mean, you could actually argue that in a closing argument. But the coincidences add up that they were there, then sometime later, Kid Cudi car. And when they say blew up, when they first say blew up, you would think that it meant actually the car actually exploded, if you will. Well, it was an attempt, a Molotov cocktail in the car. The car really didn't, not that it didn't suffer any kind of injury. Damage, should I say. But it suffered some, but, yeah. We seen the pictures, so. But the way they try to make it seem like it was catastrophic. The sad part, they're saying that he was driving the Porsche the same night of the trespass, right? And but who was it that told Diddy where Kid Cudi live? See, they forget that part, right? Who told Diddy where Kid Cudi live? Wasn't it Cassie? And Cassie testified to that in court. She was the one that gave Diddy's information to she was the one that testified that she gave Kid Cudi's information to Diddy. So who introduced Kid Cudi to Cassie? Diddy. From a business perspective, right? AUSA Slavic. Kid Cudi had conflicts with no one except the defendant. The government didn't prove that. They don't know who he had conflicts with. But yet they'll say it. Then D-Rock brought Kid Cudi to the defendant. That's not true. Once again, now they can't see how they stated that. Now basically, they kidnapped D-Rock, kidnapped Kid Cudi too, y'all. Then D-Rock brought Kid Cudi to the defendant, who was looking like a Marvel supervillain. Boy, this is crazy. Years later, the defendant apologized to Kid Cudi. Then there's Bribery, right? The Bribery, the 2016 video. I mean, the 2016 video. No, it wasn't bribery, because the NDA that was signed allowed for Garcia to actually go and report whatever he had or the situation to the police. So he just wanted to buy the tape. He didn't try to bribe him. To try to bribe somebody is to try to stop them from informing the authorities or letting anybody know about it. What they paid for was the tape, to try to avoid the public nightmare of being embarrassed. Like I said, doing the Rule 29 motion, they offered that up as evidence to the fact that Cassie didn't want that tape out either. So she was just as much as in cahoots with that tape not coming out as they're saying Diddy was in trying to purchase the tape to prevent the public nightmare of that tape being shown, which was ultimately shown. Fatima Barrett in the building. Who else? Bobby Jones, intelligent hoodlum, universal ass. Keshana Carver, true monger. Jamar 650. What's good? They say now it's bribery. This case is full of mischaracterizations of situations that wouldn't normally be characterized like this if Diddy was anybody else. AUSA Slavic, the defendant was having a freak off with Cassie and one of the escort, Jules. Flores found the defendant sitting in a chair with what he called a devilish stare in the room. He saw another man. The defendant tried to hand Flores a stack of money. I believe Flores was the first security guard that was on the scene at the Intercontinental Hotel. AUSA Slavic. It was his first attempt at a bribe that day. As Cassie leaves, Combs starts damage control. The judge says basically, we had a power issue Is your mic working? AUSA Slavic, hello? Yes. He called Cassie over a dozen times. The text, call me. Cops are here. When in fact the police never were called. So, hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. It's greatly appreciated. I appreciate everybody coming back. We got over 300 people in the room. Hit the thumbs up button. AUSA Slavic, he was just manipulating her, but the defendant knew he could be arrested. There was a video of the assault. He went and banged on Cassie's door with a hammer. Neighbors were going to call the police. They did, in fact, go. Carrie Morgan had the LAPD card. But what did Cassie do? Did she report it? No. Why? Who knows? Only she knows. Oh yeah, she testified that she wasn't ready to yet. Andrea Dreams, Olu Fash, Cut Creatives, Fatima Barrett, welcome back. That guy, MC Fly, Annan Lee, kiddo.com. Welcome, y'all. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel, please. Appreciate you. Edward Green, Calvin Richards. Calvin Richards, you say the defense needs to go next because this is some bullshit. Well, like I said, once again, I think, the prosecution has their argument and then the defense makes their argument. A Killer Rob, what's good? Rap Tales. Mark Jag, Kathy Rose, Martin Dixon, welcome. Yeah, that was Carrie Morgan, a Capricorn Clark. Listen, AUSA Slavic, KK suggests, say they had a gun. KK suggests, say they had a gun. Say they had fun and drunk night. She calls and reaches Eddie Garcia. Eddie says no. Then KK shows up in person. He won't show her, but says off the record, it's bad, meaning the tape. I think Christina Karam was basically, they're suggesting that Christina Karam told Eddie Garcia that to say that they had a fun and drunk night. Then she calls and reaches Eddie Garcia. Eddie Garcia says no. Then she went and showed up in person. And he wouldn't show her the tape, but says off the record, it's bad. KK has the defendant call Eddie on him, call him on the personal phone, if you will. AU, excuse me, AUSA Slavic. Once Eddie says his boss will do it for $50,000, meaning sell the tape, the defendant calls him Eddie my angel. That's how he saved. That's how he saved in the cell phone as Eddie my angel, I guess. Eddie goes to deliver the USB. D-Rock and KK are there. The defendant counted out the dollars, dollar by dollar, the bribe. Like I said, the jury can look at that either way they want. But like I said, during the Rule 29 motion, the defense argued something else. So we'll basically hear, because, as the prosecution is laying out their closing arguments, you best believe the defense is taking notes as to how to counter whatever the argument is that the prosecution is making. So SAS Dre, Terrence Taylor, Winter, Welcome, Bobby Jones, Chris Conlon, what's happening? Well, the Rule 29 motion basically got the prosecution to basically take out those other predicate acts, but they're still using it as an argument in their closing arguments, like the situation dealing with Capricorn Clark, the Kid Cudi, basically trying to say that Diddy, burned up his car. Remember, they said they couldn't prove it, so they had to basically remove that. But they're now arguing in the closing arguments that they're not suggesting that he put the hole in the roof, but that he had somebody do it, from that perspective. So, J Mac, what's good? But best believe, like I said, the defense is going to argue, they're saying that, our client did X, Y, and Z. They never put our client there. We don't know, who did that. It could be anybody, and that's true. Whatever the jury believes is totally different. AUSA Slavic. Eddie told you the security guard told him he came up with the defendant, right? Meaning he came up to the room with the defendant. That was D-Rock. Eddie asked the defendant, what if Cassie calls police? So the defendant knew. Eddie finds the ID of stand-in for Flores, right? NDAs are signed. Don't speak to anyone. That's a lie. That's a misrepresentation of what happened. The NDA specifically said that Eddie Garcia could contact authorities. So that totally is not true as to what they're alluding to at this particular time in their closing arguments, man. It's crazy. Man. and one must understand the fact that and they're going to bring this up in the closing arguments by the defense, the fact that Eddie Garcia, the security guard, not only did he pay him not $50,000 but $100,000, right? Once they got to the meeting, like, oh, who is this? This the other guy. Oh, this the other guy. Oh, so he 50 more thousand, right? Remember, they lied and said that was the only copy of the video. So they basically hustled Diddy out of $100,000, and in the NDA, it actually had a stipulation that if it was violated, that there was $1 million consequence as to that violation. So hypothetically, if Diddy gets off, he can sue them still. So the 50,000 or whatever, the $100,000 or whatever, was it really worth it? If he decides to pursue that, them for lying to him about that being the only tape. Somebody said, well, Kev V said, all right, not guilty, next. Y'all funny. Side note, Inner City Press, for those asking, during this closing, Sean Combs has his hair pushed back, has his chair pushed way back from the defense table and is looking around. Prosecution, Slavic, paying for silence is influencing testimony. In their opening, the defense suggested it was just about bad publicity. You see how that's the Monday morning quarterback move. So the prosecution is arguing, saying, well, paying for silence is influencing testimony. That was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was approximately 9 years before anything ever came up about this situation, ladies and gentlemen. So influencing testimony in regards to what? Cassie never called the police. So the only person that could testify to anything from that perspective would be Cassie in regards to what happened to her and file any kind of charge. Now, once again, the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, allowed for Eddie Garcia to contact the police. He chose not to. Why? Because he wanted the $50,000 and he gave up the tape. So, but the jury is the ultimate deciding factor here as to what they want to believe, man. The prosecution. They told you it was about bad publicity. Like, what was Eddie Garcia testifying to when they say paying for silence is influencing testimony? Testimony as to what? As to the fact that Cassie didn't call the police? As to the fact that she was with Diddy 2 days later? Thank you for Bobby Jones, Martin Dixon. Well, it wasn't about it wasn't even about getting somebody else to pay the money. Like you said, I totally understand that, Martin. It wasn't about getting somebody else to pay the money. He wanted to get the tape. This happens all the time, ladies and gentlemen. People say they got, SEX tapes of people or whatever, they buy the tape. It's not any kind of, what's the name? People try to blackmail people all the time. And so, no different here. The situation was a domestic violence situation. They're now trying to turn this into a federal racketeering and bribery situation for something that was actually a state charge that was never filed. You got to understand that. The statute of limitations had expired in regards to that situation from 2016, and there was nothing done. Now they're trying to turn that into something federal, if you will, when it was actually a state situation. So one must put it in its proper context. Yeah, we got 334 people in the room, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the thumbs up button. Share the content. Let them know we over here going gavel to gavel, and basically just looking at the information. And like I said, a lot of the information that most people get is from the media. As you seen yesterday, the media ran. That was the first time that the media kind of ran with the fact that the prosecution had dropped all of those charges, if you will. Christine Capricorn Clark, the Cassie kidnapping situation, as well as the aiding and abetting. Like I said, and my question is that I ask, if Christina Karam was such a co-defendant, why didn't they arrest her? You know why they didn't arrest Christina Karam? It's because she would have got up on the stand, right? Probably with no immunity. Or they probably, because they did have her phone. So I'm sure they, raided her place just like they raided Jane's place. They did have her phone and they used her phone, but she would have got up there and testified that everything that she did was under her work. Right? Simple. I don't know if they're having an issue with the microphone. Let's see. Like I said, we got two sources of information. Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. AUSA Slavic. Police involvement would hurt them. The two are connected. The next racketeering predicate is the sex trafficking. Defendants inner circle assisted whether they wanted to or not. So hold on. So now, once again, that's an inference as to something, right? Where's D-Rock? Where's all of these other people? Right? That they're basically saying that they wanted to or not. So she would say, well, the two are connected. The next is the racketeering predicate is the sex trafficker. Defendants in a circle assisted whether they wanted to or not. Threats, drugs, lies, and illegal violence to make them have sex with escorts. Huh? Wow. So nobody was responsible for their own behavior. Yeah, the defense is gonna have a field day with this with their closing arguments. You can best believe that. Prosecution. This is not an attempt to criminalize this. Listen, now you hear the truth about what's actually happening, because if it's not something, then you don't even have to mention it. Listen to this part right here. This part is very important, ladies and gentlemen. What does the prosecution admit? This is not an attempt to criminalize a dysfunctional relationship or personal sexual behavior. They did not want to have sex with strangers while the defendant masturbated. They were covered in oil and saw over and over again. Wow. Despite what Cassie said, despite what Jane said, this is what the prosecution is saying. Okay. Jay Warren, welcome. Michael Parker, thanks for the donation. Michael Parker said, how was it bribery when I was the security guard that made the $50K offer for the tape? Right? Absolutely. That's funny. And there wasn't any charges filed. I know that was my what I just said in regards to when they said, well, them actually, well, Diddy buying the tape is affecting testimony. Testimony about what? The police wasn't even called, first and foremost, for there even to be any kind of testimony to be had. Cassie didn't want to call the police at that particular time for whatever her reason was. And so, yeah, Michael Parker, you're right. AUSA Slavic, we are not asking you to find that every hotel night or freak off was sex trafficking. If you see, there it is. That's that moment right there. If it wasn't once, it wasn't never. Right? Then see, now they're saying when somebody says no, they mean no. Right? Or stop or whatever in this situation. We're not asking you to find that every hotel night freak off was sex trafficking or even the majority. You only need to find the elements were met one time. Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that? They're not even, they're saying we just need you to find one of them times. One freak off. That's it. He's guilty. But it was way more than once. Amazing. So they're basically saying, okay, we know that he was using drugs. We know that he didn't really buy drugs. We just need you to find that one time that he used drugs, it was illegal. You know that time they were driving past the school zone? He used them in the car. That's illegal. He had drugs. He had possession of drugs in the school zone. I mean, man, they grasping at straws. Truth tellers in the building. Who else? Michael Parker. Once again, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not even until they change their mind. The fact of the matter is, you see in these two pieces of testimony, right? Usually what people say they're not trying to do is what they're trying to do. And when the prosecution says, this is not an attempt to criminalize a dysfunctional or personal sexual behavior. Yes, it is. Because if it wasn't that, you wouldn't have to mention it. You would just stick with the predicate acts of the crimes that you are alleging that the defendant committed. You wouldn't have to say that. The only reason why you're saying that, because that's what this really, truly, honestly is. Right? And so, once again, they're cherry picking off of the little things that they, I would say, persuaded, Cassie them to say in some of their testimony. But let's see where they go with it. Let's see. Like I said, we wouldn't be able to make an informed opinion about what we're seeing right now. Hadn't we been here, most of the people in the chat, hadn't we been here from the beginning of the trial, right? You know, we would kind of be lost. Like a lot of people, they come in and they make statements. It's like you would have to be here from the beginning to the end to understand, like, okay, what was said, you know, what was admitted to. And then when the cross-examination happened, how they tripped up the cross-examination. She said, prosecution, let's start with Jane. Turn off the public screens. Combs still in his chair, passed back and forth from the defense table, at which Xavier Donaldson and Alexandra Shapiro have their chins in their hand. Prosecution, consider the sobriety party. And in Jane's house. Prosecution, let's start with the love bombing stage. This is crazy, man. Let's start with the love bombing stage. Jane was head over heels. They traveled to the Caribbean. Dr. Hughes talked about this. She never met with any witness, but it was like she knew them. Y'all, yo, hit the like button, hit the share button. Did y'all hear what the prosecution just said? So, Dr. Hughes was a psychiatrist, right? Who did not interview any of the witnesses. Wasn't the psychiatrist for Cassie, nor Jane, nor any of the witnesses. But the prosecution just alluded to, let's start with the love bombing stage. Jane was head over heels. They traveled to the Caribbean. Dr. Hughes talked about this. She never met with any witness, but it was like she knew them. Oh, man. It was like she knew them. How did she know them? She said love bombing is a tactic. He was grooming her. Huh? Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you remember in the beginning, when they first met and this situation kicked off, Jane, listen, ladies and gentlemen, Diddy was dating Daphne Joy's friend. Daphne Joy, aka Jane, has a child by 50 Cent. Speaking less clear, so we understand, everybody understands. When she meets Diddy, they meet on a yacht, and Diddy at that particular time is dating Jane's friend, whom Jane, aka Daphne Joy, goes behind her friend's back and starts dating Diddy, never to tell her friend, and she didn't want 50 Cent to know about it. Right? Let's be clear. So, how in the hell was Sean P. Diddy Combs grooming her when she was keeping every goddamn thing a secret? Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the thumbs up button. We got 360 people in the room now. Like I said, hit the thumbs up button, please. He said, Mark Jag said, Young Miami triggered all these women. And you right, Mark Jag. And not only that, grooming a 35-year-old woman who was on OnlyFans. God have mercy. Wow. So you know that's going to be part of the defense's closing arguments. When they close, they're basically going to say, hey, you know what? Prosecution. Jane was excited by that first experience. She didn't realize she had opened Pandora's box. It became 90% of their relationship for a while. She went along. Then she told him she wanted to stop. There are texts about this shown with the screen off. Now, ladies and gentlemen, right here, right there, when she said there were texts shown that she said that she told him she wanted to stop. Now, right there, Jane, you can leave. You don't want to be with him no more, you can leave. But she didn't leave. Why? Because she liked the Bottega Veneta bags. She liked the love bracelet. She liked all of the lifestyle. She liked the private jet. She liked the first class flights. Remember, Diddy gave her $10,000 because when the first time they had spent time together, he gave her $10,000 saying, hey, you know what? You stayed with me and it's cool. It's all good. There wasn't a situation. They didn't have no FO that at that particular time. It was just them. Remember, she's going behind her friend back. Right? And so, at this particular time, I don't know how many years or months they're into the relationship. She said, well, then there's texts about that. Then she wanted to say, okay, stop, leave him. Be done. Yeah, he's weird. Then a lot of the things that he is into is weird, period, point blank. But she doesn't have to stay. She chooses to stay. Right? This is what the defense was arguing. Basically, they had the opportunity to leave the situation. She said she wanted to stop, leave. The prosecution. Jane wrote, I wanted to do things outside these rooms, to travel with you. The defendant ignored Jane's discomfort. No, Jane ignored Jane's discomfort. You're not comfortable with the situation, leave. But they're not talking about what Jane said. He said Jane wanted to travel with him. The defendant ignored Jane's discomfort. Those hotel nights were not about what Jane wanted. They were about what the defendant wanted to see. He decided how long. No, he didn't. Jane decided that she didn't want to leave because the pros outweighed the cons. It's just simple as that. So, for the people who've been watching, remember when Jane said, when she said, yeah, I wanted to try, I think they went to Turks and Caicos. Yeah, they went to Turks and Caicos. He went to Turks and Caicos with somebody else. And she found out about it. And she was like, oh, I guess I gotta, F some more, so I could go with you, blah, blah, blah. So right then and there, she knew what was going on and she was with it. And not only that, Jane started to use the situations with the escorts and stuff as leverage. And she admitted that in her testimony. She said, yeah, that was the first time I used the freak off card. You know what I mean? As a power play to Diddy, telling him that I wouldn't do certain things, if he didn't come back from off the trip with Young Miami. And he came back, according to her testimony, right? So she knew exactly what was going on. So once again, but if they have it their way, no, she didn't know. She wasn't accountable. Amazing. Ian Good, what's up? A sucker for sneakers. Anthony X. Nick, the contextualist. What's happening? Welcome. Hit the thumbs up button, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not subscribed to the channel, share the feed on your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or any other social media apparatus that you guys have. LinkedIn. AUSA Slavic, Jane said that if she was going to be with strange men, she should choose which ones they are. Oh, right? Y'all hear that? That was one of the admissions that she said if she was going to be with strange men, she would choose which. The defendant made her ask them for nude photos. These were not for her. When she asked to use condoms, the defendant was not happy. He was dismissive and condescending. AUSA Slavic, she would try to have it go faster. He'd order her to slow down. It was about what he wanted. He dangled carrots. He gave her gifts and money. He lied to her repeatedly. She asked, when are we going to get away? He said they'd go on the yacht, but didn't. That's not true. But I'm sure the defense gonna get to that. They did go on the yacht, but the prosecution not gonna say that because that wouldn't bode well for their argument. JoJo, what's good? Keishana Carver. Mo Better, what's happening, man? Jay Warren. DJ Crazy K. Winter, what's good? Martin Dixon, what's happening? So now, prosecution. Here's what Jane wrote in her notes app. I don't want to have you use me to fulfill your freaky wild desires in hotel rooms. He used his payment of her rent as leverage. The carrot turned into a stick. She wrote, the threats and innuendos are nonstop. Basically said the threats and the innuendos are nonstop. Hold on now, ladies and gentlemen. She said that he used his payment of the rent as leverage. How? She could leave. She could pay her own rent. Go pay your own rent. You ain't got to stay with him. No, it was the $10,000 a month allowance that he was giving her too. She even said, for the people who were in the chat since the beginning, she even said that the $10,000 wasn't even enough. She said, I had 3 credit cards. So he was giving her even more money, right? Once again, when does the conscious decision to say, you know what, I'm done, I'm out, come into play, right? The prosecution, once again, he paid for her veneers because he didn't like her teeth, and then said, look at the roof over her head and your pretty mouth and teeth. He wanted the all-star party, interaction with 3 men. She sent him a photo of her menstrual cycle. AUSA Slavic. He sent this a voice note, Sean Combs' voice, basically saying, I'm about to really disappear on you. I don't have no time for this, baby girl. You got me on my job, so you got to get on your job, right? AUSA, this message couldn't be clearer. Not going to take no for an answer. Once again, once again, that's not what that meant, right? And the part like this, that voicemail in particular, there's more to the voicemail. And the other part that he said in the voicemail was he said, yeah, you got me on my job, you need to get on your job. And when they asked Jane what did she think that meant, and she basically testified as to what it meant for her, not what the prosecution is trying to describe it to the jury right now. She said that it meant because she wasn't returning his calls or something like that, and he's basically saying, you get mad and then you don't pick up the phone and you don't X, Y, and Z. That's what he was talking about in that situation. And he actually admitted that that was the other part of the text that they're not reading. Born King is in the building. What'd he say? Even though Diddy is a cuck, that's a lifestyle. Yeah, Born King, you're exactly right. And like I said, once again, it's funny how the mischaracterizations of what somebody mean and what they're saying is being done by the prosecution. I mean, they don't have much to go on. I don't think that this closing argument should last long. So, because Brandon Carter's in the building. You can always watch it back, Brandon. Born King in the building. Paris Jordan says what? Listening to the prosecution sounds horrible. Anonymous 3 says this is ridiculous at this point. Four hours. Yeah, so that's what I said. I'm just going by, like I said from the beginning, Nancy, that they said that when you think about what the information in the trial that they had to go on versus what they said that they wouldn't be dealing with yesterday, that the prosecution really doesn't have much to, it's like, okay, would if it was defense putting on witnesses, they would be like, oh, that's hearsay. You've seen how many times the prosecution objected when the defense would do their cross-examination versus how many times the defense objected when the prosecution was doing their direct. Inner City Press, for those asking, USA Slavic is looking down and reading her closing statements from a binder on the lectern. USA Slavic, after reading Cassie's lawsuit, Jane writes to the defendant, I feel like I'm reading my own sexual trauma. 2 of my birthdays, you forced me. So Mo Better. Michael Parker, thanks again for the donation. Yeah, Michael Parker said, I'm not making this about race, but please believe the black jurors are not buying the prosecution's bullshit. Yeah, I think, Michael, I think when you look at it from that perspective, I don't even think we would be here if it wasn't Diddy. Like I said, once again, when I go back to the Jay-Z situation, when they brought up the bogus ass situation involving Jay-Z, with some alleged young Caucasian female, right? You can see how they tried to play the race game in this little, Caucasian young girl at the MTV Music Awards in 2000 and early 2000s or something. You know what I mean? That's all to play. That's all to play the race game, right? None of that was true. None of it was true. Jay-Z is now suing the lawyer and the young lady for defamation for millions of dollars, right? You don't even hear the media talk about it no more. But when it was something that was being alleged, oh man, they ran with it. Diddy was a part of that. He was named as one of the co-defendants in that situation. The charge got dismissed with him too. It was never a charge. It never happened. It never happened. Never happened. It was all made up. They took pictures from a certain location and created a story behind those pictures that didn't even involve the young lady that they were saying it happened to, right? From that perspective. So you can imagine why that happened the way that happened. We see Jay-Z the other day at the Louis Vuitton fashion, what's the name? We seen him in Paris also performing with Beyonce. You see how huge that was, right? Once again, this was all to tear him down, and he fought back, and he used his money and his power and his influence to fight back. Those charges would basically drop. It was found that Tony Busby was actually filing. He was not allowed to practice law in the Southern District of New York. He wasn't licensed to do that. That came out also. You don't hear them talking about that, ladies and gentlemen. Right? So, once again, here we go. But the salaciousness, the all of the craziness that when it comes out, Jay-Z, and then not that the crazy part is none of it's true, but the media doesn't even bother to care whether none of it's true or not. They're just reading it. So yeah. AUSA Slavic Jane wrote, "You gaslit me. It was your sexual exploitation. You framed as love for your sick fetishes." That's what she wrote in her notes, right? The defendant called her and tried to trick her into saying it was all consented to. He fed her a false narrative. Listen to this clip. He talked over her. AUSA Slavic, Dr. Hughes told you how a victim is trauma bonded to her abuser. Jane often felt the defendant didn't listen to the truth. She said Sean would say, just to move on. He told her to charge him, that lawyers would be involved, to buy her silence. Nick said, let's talk about, you said, let's talk about hoish Jane from the jump. She went behind her friend's back to get with Puff. To me, that says a lot about her character. She can't be trusted. Yeah, absolutely. From that perspective, I mean, they don't want to hear that though. That part right there, they want to overlook that. We're not going to look at that. That doesn't go with our narrative, right? But I think, like I said, the defense is going to get to that. And from what I'm understanding from somebody in the chat, they said that the closing arguments in totality are going to last approximately 4 hours, if you will. So we'll get a chance to see, what the defense argues. Yeah, sometimes people can be toxic, man. I don't think it's about race. I think people can be toxic no matter the race. No, I don't think she is. Anonymous 3, I don't think Cassie is. Oh, she is. Oh, wow. Anna Lee, we don't know who's doing the closing arguments for the defense as of yet. But we will find out soon. AUSA. So she listen, y'all, because we get to the money now. The prosecution. So she asked for $100,000 a year for her to move on, ladies and gentlemen. She thought it was reasonable, far less than Cassie. So hold on. She said she didn't want to be there. She didn't like, participating in the activities, the things that Diddy like, right? So she asked for $100,000 a year for her to move on. She thought it was reasonable, far less than Cassie. The defendant went ballistic. He refused to adopt her false narrative. You can read the text message. Basically, the inner city press says, we can't. They're not on the screen. Right? So I guess in the public gallery, they have a public screen also, and they're not basically showing the text. I think they're doing that for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. They don't want them to basically show the text messages to the public, or have them readily available, if you will. Because a lot of the stuff, they have basically sealed it, if you will. The prosecution, Jane wrote that the defendant was going to show her tapes to the father of her child. So Jane, aka Daphne Joy, wrote that the defendant was going to show her tapes to the father of her child, meaning Diddy said that he was going to show the tapes of her to 50 Cent. And then he reached out and told her to come see him in Miami. She makes it clear. She doesn't want a hotel night. He says, okay, despite his promise. He called one of the escorts. Prosecution. Here are more threats about the rent. Jane writes, I hate worrying about the rent that she wasn't paying. Oh man. Here are more threats about the rent. Jane writes, I hate worrying about the rent. This is listen, because now you got to understand where this mindset is coming from. Now she's already talking to prosecutors. This is in 2024. So this was in around June 2024, right? She says, and the prosecution is basically saying, here are more threats about the rent. Jane writes, I hate worrying about the rent. This is in 2024. It's all culminated in June 2024. He assaulted her and forced her to perform with an escort. This is sex trafficking. No. And you know the sad part about that? All of this was testified to. She assaulted him first. That was the only, in there, 2020, 21, 22. I think they had a 4-year relationship. And in 4 years, the only situation that happened involving violence, Jane, aka Daphne Joy, admitted to that she was the aggressor. She was the provocateur, right? In that situation. But if you hear what the prosecution is talking right now, that basically he assaulted her. If you weren't, like I said, if you weren't around from the beginning of this is what you're going to think. This is what you're going to think. So, prosecution, it was interstate, and the astroglide. Listen, lady, she said it was interstate, and the astroglide crossed state lines. What? The defendant knew or recklessly disregarded that force, threats of force, coercion, or fraud were used. Consenting once doesn't mean consenting every time. One time is enough. Absolutely. A sucker for sneakers. We are, like I said, once again, they don't want it to be viewed as the same thing. We seen the Cassie tape. It was appalling. It was this. When it came out that she banged Diddy head up against some kind of marble table, my question was it seen as the same thing? I mean, even though we didn't see the tape, she described what happened. She was throwing candles and throwing this and throwing all of this other crazy stuff. It's not viewed as the same, ladies and gentlemen. Right. That was a blatant lie. DJ Crazy K. I'm sorry. Edward Green, you seen it. Yeah, it is insane, man. The prosecution in 2023, he made Jane feel she'd have a proper New York City weekend, but invited escorts. Jane sent him another message. It's dark and sleazy. In fear of losing my home. His response, girl, stop. Then he FaceTimed her and told her about stopping and dinner. What? Like I said, she said she in fear of losing my home. It wasn't her home. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. What Diddy was paying rent for, it wasn't her home. Diddy was paying, the place was actually being rented. It wasn't a home she owned. There wasn't a mortgage. There was rent. She could have just as easily had paid $10,000 for a place, but it was up to Diddy's discretion because he was paying, the rent for the place, right? So when she said I was worrying about my home, that has nothing to do with, is Diddy responsible for that? Or can she, Jane, aka Daphne Joy, can she now get out and find her own place? Yeah, no, it wasn't even that. I think Diddy basically was, he was paying for the rent or sending her wires to pay for the rent. It wasn't even that. That was her worry. She was putting herself out there like that. Now, all of a sudden, her worries became his reality. It's crazy. The prosecution. He lied. Look, public screen is still off for summary chart. Prosecution. He is also texting Paul, Arthur, as escort. Look at these messages. He is setting up a hotel night. When she's in the air, he tells her he has a surprise for her. She did not want it. Once again, they're focusing on only the time that they basically saying that she didn't want it or whatever. Not the times that she set everything up. So it's like, don't focus on the times that I did. Just focus on the times that I didn't. You get it? Basically, that's what they're saying. Don't focus on the times that she did like it. Just focus on the one time that she didn't. Because that's the time that we need you to focus on. Don't focus on the 10,000 times that he paid the rent. Just focus on the one time that he didn't. Think about that for a minute. Right? Don't focus on all the times that he was good to her. Focus on the one time that he didn't, that he wasn't. That's amazing, right? That's a hell of a standard to be held to, right? Think about that for a minute. Don't focus on the thousands of times that I was and that Diddy was good to her. Just focus on the one time that he wasn't, or that she felt like he wasn't. Amazing. Amazing. God have mercy. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. Hit the thumbs up button. The prosecution, that before the plane even lands, is a complete act of sex trafficking. He ticketed her. Then under coercion, she calls Cabral to come to New York. The next text says, in New York City, I knew you would pair me up with a random person. Wow. Michael Parker. I don't know if Michael Parker, I don't know how the rules of that concerning if I think if it was different aspects of the case that one would be more could specialize in than the other, that might could be it. But usually they let one attorney. But I think, it all depends. It all depends. Like I said, you would have to know the rules of the court of the SDNY, right? And so that one I'm not really too sure of. But as you see, the last one, that before the plane lands, is a complete act of trafficking. He tricked her. Then under coercions, she said she calls Cabral to come to New York. What? Wow. She says in New York, I knew you would pair me up with a random person. Yeah, so she knew exactly what was going on. We're going to see how the jury sees it, man. Yeah, that's true. Prosecution in the sobriety party without drugs. And she is so disgusted, she vomits. She writes, I'm not a porn star. I'm not an animal. I need a break. The defendant responds, let's spend the day. No strangers. She replies, you'll love bomb me. One Love, what's good? Welcome to the chat. POC 9900. Got 373 people in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We also appreciate the people outside the chat who don't want us to know that they're watching Straight Game TV. We appreciate you too. For the most part, like I said, if you ever get up the courage, please subscribe to the channel. Very much appreciated. Well, I don't know if you guys heard that Little Rod's lawyer, Tyrone Blackburn, was arrested for assault with his vehicle. Tyrone Blackburn also represents the young man suing Fat Joe, and also he represents Little Rod. So Tyrone Blackburn now has charges filed against him. They said he ran into a process server with his car. So he was being served legal documents, and he in turn hit the process server with his car, and he was arrested. So for the people that don't know anything about that, that's the latest news in regards to this whole Diddy, Fat Joe. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you heard about that, but USA Slavic basically says he switches from a carrot to a stick. The house, he texts, are you going to let me into our house? 8 times. Then he said he was sick and needed her. She went and was with him with 3 different individuals without drugs. After vomit, he said, get back out there. Yeah, I don't know if you guys had heard about that, but yeah, Tyrone Blackburn was arrested. Once again, he was Breonna's lawyer also. Breonna testified in this case basically that that Tyrone was putting lies in lawyer demand letters to Diddy, and saying that Diddy did things that actually didn't happen. And Brianna Bongolan basically said that she fired Tyrone Blackburn for that, and he was no longer her lawyer. The thing, like I said once again, Brianna is also suing Diddy for $10 million, ladies and gentlemen. Go figure, man. Go figure. In 2024, in Jane's house, 3 months after Homeland Security agents searched the defendants' homes, and they used Jane's house. He came there. They were supposed to have a fun date night. They drank and argued. She pushed his head. Now here comes the part where they admit they drank and argued. She pushed his head into a counter. Prosecution. He shouted at her, then told her to leave. She ran and closed the door. He kicked down 3 doors. You saw the doors. Here's one of them on the screen. Public screens are still off for no reason. That's what inner city press is letting us know. Prosecutions. She ran without shoes. She hid. He was waiting. But no, that wasn't what she just did on him. Wasn't domestic violence. She was just angry. Crazy, man. We seen the Cassie tape. They showed the Cassie tape probably like 6 times in this case. As many times as they could possibly show that tape, using Dr. Hughes, using Eddie Garcia. They wanted to ingrain that tape into the jury's head, if you will. Right? He said if it's not on tape, I don't believe it. Yeah, that's how a lot of people like to move with that. Even though she actually said that she did that. They say, well, if it's not on tape, I don't believe it. Depending on who wants to believe what at what time. That's how that works. So. The prosecution. Jane hit the defendant. He punched her in the face. Here are photos. Public screens are off, right? So they don't want the photos to be shown. Why even have to, make it look like this is some kind of, public trial? I mean, if they're not going to let the public see the people in the courtroom at least, right? The prosecution, he dragged her by the hair back into the house. Jane took his phone and called the other woman. She shouted. The defendant called Jonathan Perez. Right? So at that particular time, I think that was Young Miami. But this is the sad part about this is she tried to change the game in the 9th inning. When she first met Diddy, ladies and gentlemen, let's remember, she went behind her friend's back to get with Diddy. Never told her friend and didn't want 50 Cent to know about her messing with Diddy. And not only that, then later, in the beginning, Diddy told her that he was polyamorous, right? Which means he, had other girlfriends, he dated other women, and so on and so forth. So she knew that from the beginning. So all of a sudden, now, later into the relationship, for whatever reason, I guess she got feelings or whatever, now she's tripping out, hit him and whatever, and they get into this one situation, in which now turns into something else, that they're trying to label as a trafficking, right? When she knew from the beginning what it was, he told her from the beginning, so she had a chance to make an informed decision. And she chose the money. She chose the lifestyle. And then she chose to go along with the things that he liked to do. You know, even though she said she didn't want to do it. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, he's weird. Like I said, we all know that now. Diddy's a cuck, right? So with that being said, leave. Be done. And then when the Cassie lawsuit came out, and she was like, well, I need $100,000 for every year I was with you. So what was it really about? The prosecution, he followed her into the shower and hit her, knocked her down. He called Anton and told her to be with him. She put on makeup to hide her injuries. She drove to pick up Anton at the gate. Then the defendant said, take this pill. Prosecutions. He put his face inches from hers and asked, is this coercion? He was brazenly acknowledging he was breaking the very same law violated before. Jane didn't want to be with Anton that night. She said no, but he wouldn't take no as an answer. So when she drove out to the gate to pick up Anton, allegedly from what the prosecution is describing, she could have kept driving outside that gate. She could have kept going. She drove to the gate to pick him up. So keep driving. Or was she being held against her will? We don't know. This is what they're telling us, ladies and gentlemen. The prosecution, Jane performed until Anton finished. And then the defendant told his security to bring cash to Anton. They didn't have it. The next day, he gave Jane the money to pay Anton. She Ubered the bag of money over to him. This was coercion. Wow. Don't forget that part of that money, what was it? I think, was it like, what they said, it was $13,000 or something like that. $17,000 to $13,000. And part of that money went to pay for the broken doors, right? What they didn't admit also, that they were drinking and using drugs also on that particular night. And Jane, aka Daphne Joy, had admitted to being intoxicated. She said that's why she hit him. Somebody said the next case will be the Carmelo Anthony first degree unaliving charge. Right. You said that's right. The provocateur, Mark Jag, cut creators. Wow. AUSA Slavic, Jane performed, hold on, so what the judge said, Miss Slavic, at the appropriate time, let's take a break for lunch. Miss Slavic said, this would be a fine time. Judge, okay, jurors, you may go eat. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all see what's going on? Check it out.
They said Tupac was untouchable. But behind the walls of Rikers Island, he was just a man, wounded, watching his back, and wondering who he could trust. He survived bullets, betrayal, and isolation behind bars. But what happened inside those walls has never been told until now. In the darkest corner of Rikers, he found betrayal and a brotherhood no one saw coming. These dudes smiled in my face, then flipped and tried to kill me, and I never saw it coming. They were Puff's security, Biggie's muscle, Henchman's people, and Tupac knew exactly who sent them. This is the side of Tupac Shakur the world never got to see, told by the man who lived it with him, not in the studio, but in a 6x9 cell. The rap battles, sex and drama with female guards, the tears, the silence after Jada Pinkett's visit, and the moment Tupac almost broke. Before Death Row, before All Eyes on Me, before Machiavelli, there was Rikers. Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, available now on Amazon. Get your copy. Learn the truth.